There's a great article out yesterday that I read, and I thought it was really, really well done by somebody who knows. Her name is Helen Raleigh, and she was born in China and lived in China for a while. And what she talked about how to fight this cultural revolution, she's lived through one before. And I wanted to get her on. Hi, Helen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Glenn?
I'm very good. So can you just tell the story about what you wrote yesterday in the Federalist?
Sure. So this is the one about canceling Dr. Seuss, right?
Yes.
And it's really heartbroken for me to read that Dr. Seuss was canceled on his birthday. I shared my experience of growing up in China. I never had the quality, great children's literature. I shared the story I read as a child. The children's literature was available was about condemning a beaten landowner to death.
And it was the rooster crows at midnight. Can you tell that story a bit?
Sure.
Okay.
So the rooster crow at night was a original for children. Actually, it was about this evil landowner that he was very cruel to everybody, the laborers who worked for him, and thanks to the Communist Party who liberated all the poor people, they took land and the livestock away from him and distributed to all the poor people. So all the poor people were happy. And then one night in the midnight, he tried to steal a chicken from the poor people because he didn't have any. The story did not say that. And then the children caught him. And the children who caught him, and there was a picture in the storybook, it's a black and white picture, show the children who have all pointed this shiny spear at him. And he was just knelt down on the ground, head dropped, hands tied at his back. It looks like really, completely defeated. And the author who were interviewed after the story became really popular, the author was interviewed. He mentioned this was a real life story. And the landowner who was caught after a struggle session, he was beaten to death. That's the story I read when I was a child in China.
Warm story. And when you came to America, you knew about Dr. Seuss, but it wasn't until you had a child and you started reading that you read Dr. Seuss for the first time. And what was that experience like?
It was very refreshing because I found that I'm trying to figure out a missing chapter in my own childhood, and then I was making it up, during my adulthood because there was no reason for me to even thought about reading it until I was about to become a mother, and I just love the colorful pictures. I love the simple words, but the rhymes, and I love the joy, and I just even though those Dr. Seuss book written in simple words. But they have deep meanings if you really think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Like the saying about if you keep your eyes shut, you will see nothing. That's perfect for today's cancel culture. If you keep your mind shut, if you keep your eyes shut, you will see nothing. You will learn nothing. And I wish more of us will read his book instead of banning his book.
Well, so what do you say about, because people say this is not the cancel culture, but it is when eBay refuses to sell a used copy of the book, I think. But what do you say that it was the family that said, we don't want to print these books anymore. They own the copyright. So is it cancel culture or is it just, what is it exactly? Because there are really negative stereotypes of Chinese people I can't believe I saw it on Mulberry Street.
Right, but let's just unpack this a little bit. First of all, it was not Chinese American immigrants who raised any questions about that. We cannot use today's moral standard to judge things that happened, take place with their historical context. If we do that, nobody's perfect. We're going to cancel all the valuable things ever been created because there's nothing going to be perfect enough. And I think that's why this cancel culture is really it's a culture, it's a cultural revolution. And it's not going to stop by banning a few books or tear down a few statues. It's a movement to really cancel the Western civilization. the banning of few books, pulling down the few statues is just the beginning. That's why I mentioned in my piece, I see the parallel between what's happening in America, really in the Western civilization today, is really parallel to what's happening in China during the Cultural Revolution. It's about a total destruction of the old world, so the woke mob can create a ideologically purified new world. That's why I find this whole banning of books and also eBay preventing you from even trading about it, trading a book voluntarily. That is really problematic. The Dr. Seuss enterprise, they only stopped publishing those books because the woke mob complained about those books. It was not the complaint was not filed because Asian people complained. It was filed because the woke mob decided that they are going to cancel Dr. Seuss' book, and they're going to start with the most problematic ones, and they're going to go down from there. They're never going to stop until they cancel everything.
You've lived through it. You saw the Cultural Revolution with Mao, and people say that that's crazy, that it would never happen here. But I contend that, it starts with suggestions. Then it moves to shoving people, shouting and shoving. And when you've shouted and shoved everybody that you can, the only thing left is to shoot. Is that crazy to think that kind of thing, that this is just going to continue until what are you going to do with the rest of the people that refuse to go along? How does this end if we don't wake up?
Well, if we don't wake up, it's going to end just like the Cultural Revolution. It's going to be a total destruction of the Western civilization. And you're absolutely right. The trajectory is the woke mob first going to pick something that we all agree that's problematic, right? Like the Confederate statues, like the Dr. Seuss book with the racial stereotype drawing. So they're going to pick something that's problematic to begin with. Then most of us will say, yeah, those, we can accept those things maybe not correct. But again, they will not stop there, because if you listen to their speeches, if you look at their writings, they are deeply hostile to the entire Western civilization, because they believe this civilization is inherently, irredeemably racist and oppressive. So they're going to start with statues, they're going to start with a few books, but they won't stop until this whole civilization is being destroyed. And if there are people who don't willing to go along, that's what happened in Cultural Revolution. Is eventually you're going to have to use blood to purify the ideology. So that may happen if we continue down this road. And people already losing jobs left and right, losing their livelihood today in America because they said something or wrote something that the woke mob do not like, and they will condemn them, drive them out of the marketplace. That's happening here right now.
Before I change subjects on you, I just want to point out that it's not only that they're going to wipe out the culture, they wipe out even your personal history. Helen, as she was reading about this evil landowner and how he was surrounded by kids and all landowners are evil, it wasn't until later in life that she learned that her great-grandfather was a landowner, and that book was preaching against him as well. She didn't know that. Let me just hit one more thing with you before you go. Next hour, we're going to talk about this trend, they're saying, of white supremacists that are beating up Asians. And it does not ring true to me. We can't find anything that seems legitimate on this. Do you have any insight on, is this happening where, Donald Trump fans are beating up Asians?
Well, so there's definitely a rise of hate crimes against Asians since last year. So it's complicated. Last year, some of the complaints, I should say, related to the coronavirus, the pandemic, the fear. But this year, particularly in some of the most progressive cities in the United States, like San Francisco and New York City, there are several very vicious attacks against the Asian, especially the Asian seniors, unprovoked attack against the Asian seniors.
Crazy.
And those perpetrators, they were not white. they were non-Asian, minorities. Let me just put it that way. They were not white, but the activists now and the mainstream media try to portray this very vicious attack happened recently somehow was driven by the white nationalism. There's just a disconnect there. And I think I wrote another piece for the Newsweek on this, related to this subject, because when you are not willing to identify the true root cause of hate crime, you're going to cause the government to misallocate resources and not able to protect the Asian communities, effectively and efficiently. So I wish more people will speak up. The Asian community have spoken up against the critical race theory, and I wish more people will have the courage to speak up, identify the root cause of this.
The Asian community has made a huge difference on critical race on the West Coast. And Helen, thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for your courage for standing up. I know it's not easy, but thank you for your example. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That's Helen Raleigh. She is the senior contributor for The Federalist and the author of Backlash. You can follow her at HelenRaleighSpeaks.com.